Hi, this is Pete Lyons with Let's Play Salesforce, and in tonight's Einstein Analytics video, we're going to be talking about the metrics radar. So this is a really cool visualization. I tend to get kind of boring and I end up with just bar charts and ring charts everywhere. And I might not be the most creative when it comes to an eye for design, and I'm always trying to find different visualization types that can present the information in a compelling way. And I find that this is one that tends to get my clients either very interested or immediately dismissive. Because if they're not familiar with this type of visualization, it can be a little bit difficult to grasp what's going on. And then if they are interested in it, they immediately see the deal-breaking flaw that it has. And that is that we cannot set the domain like we can on other visualizations. So if we look at the left, we'll see exactly what this is. So look at sum of my measure that goes all the way up to 495 in our north value, and we do also see that north is the strongest in sum of my measure 1, but that this one only goes up to 229. So what if we even tried percentiles? It's never going to be the same length, so what's halfway down the axis is not necessarily going to be equal to what's halfway down a different axis. And this is something that is on the roadmap, but we are probably not going to be seeing it right away. So I thought that I would just go ahead and give us all a workaround for the short term. So there's a couple of layers to this bit, and we're going to digest them one at a time. So if I was to take a look at this, it's pretty straightforward. I'm projecting 5 measures and I'm grouping by one group. And if we flip over and take a look at the SACWL, this is certainly not the most complicated thing that you're ever going to see. Q equals load my data set, Q equals group by the thing I want to group by, generate the field for my grouping, and then sum of my measure is sum of my measure, sum of my measure is sum of my measure, repeat ad nauseum, order by, and limit. And as with most things in Einstein Analytics, we don't actually need the order by or the limit to get this to run correctly. It just does the same thing anyway. And that's really all there is to it for this query. It is not complicated at all. But what we're going to need to do is we're basically going to need to figure out in this grid which number is the highest. So we can see that it's this 495 right here. And what we're going to need to do is add a placeholder row that puts a 495 in each one of these columns. So let's dig in and take a look at how we do that. So let's start by cloning this step out and flipping into SACWL mode, and we're going to begin making our modifications. So I'm going to get rid of that order and limit because I don't really need them. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add in these 6 streams. So first, what is this actually doing? Well, I'm saying for Q0, group Q by all. So it's going to take this entire data set that we started with, and it's going to flatten it down to one row. And I'm going to branch it out into 5 streams because I have 5 different measures that I want to do this with. Now we could do this with one big case statement in the projection, but I just felt like that was a whole lot of typing I didn't want to do, and this seemed like a cleaner solution. So then for each one of those, I'm going to create a new stream coming off of my Q0 stream, and I'm going to say give me the max value of what that is. So if I just run this right now, it's going to return only this Q5 because it's the final projection, so it's going to ignore everything up until there. It's still going to run it all, but all I would expect to see is what the output for the max value of Q5 is right now, which is going to be 266. So let's see if that actually works. And there we go. I've got a max value of 266. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to union all of those guys together on this QZ stream. And when I go ahead and run that, I would now expect to see one column with max val that's going to show the 5 max values out of each of those 5 measures. And there we go, 229, 422. There's that 495 that we've been looking for. So now I'm going to need to actually group and project that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a new grouping and a new projection. So now we're regrouping those QZs by all, flattening them back down to one row, and I'm going to kind of transpose here a little bit, and I'm going to say take that max val, whichever one is, you know, the max of the max val, and give that to me as my sum of me1, my sum of me2, my sum of me3, etc., etc., etc. So now I would expect to see one row with 495 for all, and I'm putting in this placeholder dot for region. So I'm going to hit run. And I'm going to switch this out for a hyphen instead of a dot, and we'll see why in just a second here. So now I'm going to update that. So there we go. So I've got a dummy placeholder region so that I actually have a unique line, and then I've got my 495 that's going to be coming through on all of those. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to union that back up with my original Q query, run it again, and now we see that I've got this 495 as my dummy region across all, and there are all my numbers. Now we're almost done here, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to update this. So the reason that I made that a hyphen instead of a dot is because I've already like hijacked the XMD to make that transparent, and we're going to cover how to do that in just a minute. But before we do, I wanted to point out the importance of how we order that final union. So right now, if I hover over this, I do see that, you know, we're looking at region equals hyphen, but when I hover over the ones that are actually there, I get the ones that I want. And the reason is because we're getting our layering in the order of our projection. So if I was to say flip this, and I switch back to SACWL mode, and instead of going union QZ, if I go union QZ, and I have the QZ stream coming in second, we're going to notice that instead of it being at the top, that dummy row is going to end up at the bottom. And there it is, now it's at the bottom. So if I update that, here's the problem. Now our entire metrics radar is underneath this big blue area, so no matter where I hover, all I see is that dummy region, and I don't get the different regions as I hover over them. So again, this flaw is not 100% going to go away. When I hover over this dummy space, I do see that null region, but you know, it's not that big of a deal. You know, we still got a pretty decent workaround here. So I'm going to flip that back, and then we're going to continue forward with this. So now we need to turn this dash from blue to transparent, and initially I thought that I was going to do this with conditional formatting and that I was just going to use a single space instead of a dot or a dash. But while I do see that dot there because I have already added it to the XMD, if I go to pick values, I currently don't have the ability to manually add any values. It's only going to be what's coming out of the actual data set itself. And this is also something that's going to be hopefully on the roadmap for the next few releases, but we don't have it today. So what I'm going to need to do is actually go back to Analytics Studio. I'm going to need to find my data set, and I'm going to first I'm going to explore it, and I'll show you what I can't do with it. If I go to Fields and I select Region and I go to Edit Values, we see again, I can only work with the values that are already here. So what I did to do this was I just put in just a placeholder one, doesn't really matter what, and then I hit the back button and I hit save. So now I've got actually something on my XMD as a placeholder, so I don't have to try to write the code myself. Now I'm going to edit that data set. I'm going to download the XMD. And now I'm going to open this up in Notepad++. So if we look in the XMD, we see the old color that I had added for my dot values. We see the new color that I've added for the value of east. And again, this is just a placeholder so that I don't have to figure out the syntax myself. So I'm just going to replace east with the hyphen that we're using, and I'm going to replace this hex code with the RGBA for transparent white. So now this guy should be good to go. I'm going to save this and upload it. All right, so if we go back to our dashboard here, and since I did make changes to it, I'm actually going to clone it in a new tab before I save it. We now see that the hyphen has been replaced with transparent. And I did try doing this with just a single blank character, instead, but I couldn't get it to work, even though the XMD did not error on me. So I went with the dot because it's very easy to just mistake that as a piece of crud on my screen, and it's not too obtrusive, although I would still prefer to not have anything there. I'm not super thrilled about being able to hover and see all of these 495s on everything, but really, it's probably not the biggest deal in the world. We have what we need. We can hover over the sections we want, and we've achieved our own custom domain without the use of the domain feature, which is on the radar and we do hope to see. So if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, tell a friend, and as always, thanks for watching.